to episode 107 of On the Bench, the podcast for scale modelers, by scale modelers, all about scale models. And this show is being brought to you through the generous support of Brad Belsham, Jamie E. Adamson, and Paul Gallagher. Thank you, gents, for your support. And of course, if you'd like to help support the show, just like these three fine, upstanding modelers, you can do so by going to www.patreon.com/onthebench and pledge any amount from $1 upwards per month. Your support is greatly appreciated. And speaking of supporting the show, why don't you check out these other fantastic podcasts all about models as well. First of all, we have the Model Geeks podcast, Just Making Conversation out of the UK, the Plastic Posse podcast, Plastic Model Mojo, and of course, Scale Model Podcasts. So go ahead and check them all out. I know that you'll enjoy listening to them as much as I do. Now let's get on with the show. The Scale Modeler Supply. Certified Australian made, Scale Model supplies a detailed range of premium acrylic paints that have been specifically developed to cater to the scale modeler. Designed to be used straight from the bottle, SMS paints have taken all the guesswork out of airbrushing. Simply shake the durable glass bottle and pour and spray for a fast drying and extremely durable result. The ever-growing range of SMS paints will suit all types of model builders, be it military, train, car, science fiction or Gunpla. SMS premium acrylic lacquer paints will have a colour to suit you. The Scale Modeler is also your one-stop shop for all your weathering, brushes, masking, tools and accessory needs. SMS paint tools and accessories are available either directly from their website, www.scalemodeler.com.au, or through stockists across Australia, New Zealand, Singapore and the US. And as a special bonus exclusive to our On The Bench listeners, you will get 10% off by using the promo code OTB when ordering direct from www.scalemodeler.com.au. So go now. Go to scalemodeler.com.au. We know you won't be disappointed. And hello and welcome to the show. And with us in the studio, I've got Ian.
G'day, Dave. G'day, listeners.
Julian, of course.
Good morning.
And our special guest, David Hourigan.
Hello there.
I got the name right.
You did. Well done, Dave.
It's a clunky name.
So Dave's joining us to talk about, he's actually classified as a miniature artist,
Yes.
which is a real swanky title.
Yep.
I make little buildings. That's what I try and keep it real as.
And so we're going to be having a bit of a deep dive into scratch building later on in the show. So welcome aboard, David. Glad to have you with us.
Thanks for having me.
So in the meantime, what have you been doing since the last show? Ian, what have you been up to?
Well, pretty much close to be finished with that little miniature that you gave me, Dave.
Yeah.
That little Primaris Aggressor. So now at the moment I'm working on making my own bases for it.
Oh, you're base manufacturing.
Yeah, so I
now.
bought a few woodworking tools, like a drop saw, router, and I'm going to get myself an angle orbital sander and start knocking up some little plinth style bases for it.
Oh, uber cool.
Uber cool, yes.
Yep.
So something to muck around with. Test my toe in the woodworking realm, as to say.
Yeah, I've got to say your little minifigure that you did is absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, it's coming up all right, isn't it? I haven't painted the miniature for close to 20 years.
Yeah,
and,
blew me away.
And my skills have definitely improved, I've noticed, since the last time I dipped my toe in that water.
Have you shared that on our Facebook page yet, the picture of it?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, sure have. But it's the first time I actually did a miniature where 90% of the miniature was done in airbrushing rather than just hand painting from start to finish.
Yeah.
And it's so much easier.
Oh, lovely. Julian?
Well, I also have my little Warhammer thing to do. It's a bit stalled at the moment. I need to go after this to the hobby shop and buy some black paint because mine's dried up.
Oh, you can't fix it?
Well, you can fix it by buying more paint, Dave.
Yeah, that's usually the way of doing it. What paint is it?
It's the Citadel stuff, but I'd almost used it all up. So
Right.
whatever was left in the bottom, just decided to,
Yeah.
turn to mush.
Yes.
Can you get Citadel from a local hobby shop?
No.
No.
So what are you going to get then?
No, I'm just going to replace it with some Vallejo black.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. That's if they got any. I was there Thursday and they had no white at all.
Really?
Yeah.
No white.
No white
That's-
Vallejo.
Well, I mean, I have to go past it on the way home anyway, so
Yeah.
it'll be fine.
Yeah, we'll duck in there. We'll have a bit of an afternoon in the hobby shop.
We could go to Games Workshop.
Yeah.
Where's the closest one? I mean, last
Oakley.
time... Yeah,
Oakley.
Oakley, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not too far, man.
Yeah.
It's out of the way.
Hey, did you see there's a new hobby shop opening up in Furniture Gully?
There's
Yes.
Yeah. So that makes 16 hobby shops, not counting a Games Workshop or
Specialist game shops.
in
Yeah.
Melbourne.
I love Melbourne. It's the
Great.
best.
Yeah.
How's that? 16 shops within an hour and a half drive.
It
of
was
where we
just,
are.
you listen to some of our listeners overseas, like in America and that, and they're struggling to find a hobby shop in their state.
Yeah, I know.
They're all closing down.
Melbourne's the place to be.
Melbourne is.
Yeah.
Most livable city.
And I almost go to none of them.
All your stuff's ordered online.
Yeah, well, usually, yeah.
Yeah,
It's an easy way of doing it.
it
Yeah.
is.
What about you, Dave? What are you working on?
I'm still playing with my figure, still trying to figure out what chapter it's going to be.
Well, you've
the
already done your
primaries.
paint job, so you've got to come up with a chapter.
Yeah, I
that
know.
says
So
that.
I've done a metallic sort of finish.
Well, make up your own chapter.
Oh, no, I don't want to do that. Well, can I?
Yeah,
That's what it's...
That's
They
what the
set it
game's
up that
for.
way on purpose.
Really? I can make my own chapter up?
Yeah,
Yeah.
The Goldfinch chapter.
So the way they've done it is so that...
From Planet Dave.
that's just too many things go through my mind when you say that.
There's a
Dave.
video game where there's this character that you meet called Dave, and he runs basically a harem. He has this small piece of property that he calls the Republic of Dave, and the only people in it are women.
What's wrong with that?
Nothing, in my opinion.
I just like there are two Daves in the room here and we're talking about Daves.
Yeah.
Oh, that's true.
That's
yes,
it,
yes. And speaking of which, what do you got on your bench at the moment, Dave?
I've just finished building a boat builders in Williamstown, and I'm about to start a furniture warehouse, which sounds really boring, but it's like a really old retro 1960s building, and it had great signage on the front, and
Yeah.
it's a kind of Art Deco building, and yeah, it's going to be fun.
That's your work side of it. What about your just building for Dave? What have you got there?
Oh, look, I bought recently a battleship. I've got two battleships that I want to build, and I haven't built one in 20 years.
Talking my language.
And I'm a little intimidated by them because they're so big, and if you screw it up, there's so much invested in it. But I really want to give it a go. So yeah.
Well, I don't see how you can be intimidated by something like that. Looking at the sort of work you do, that sort of blows my mind a little bit. Thinking, wow, if you find that intimidating, and
I think because I scratch build stuff, if I get it wrong, I can always build a replacement piece, or
Yeah.
I can start again from scratch. But
Yep.
when you drop $100, $150 on a model kit, I think that ups the stakes a little bit.
It does. It sure does.
oh, very true, very true. Well, before we get into the guts of the show, shall we have a look at some of our mail that's come in?
Yeah, listen to me.
How's that sound? There's been quite a bit actually, which is not a surprise. What? Your headphones not working?
They were. They just cut out for a bit there.
Oh, did
But they're
they?
back on again. I'm not sure
Oh.
what happened. Everything just went quiet.
We're just keeping him in the dark.
Yeah, okay.
No, they should be. That should. Yeah, and that's all working fine again. All right. Okay. Let me have a look now.
Dave's procrastinating. Yep.
No,
Here we
Jamie
go.
Addison. Adam.
Come on, Dave. It's the English language. It can't be that hard.
Jamie Addison. Adamson. I can't get that.
Is it Adamson?
It is. It
There
is.
you go. Jamie
That's what I'm
Adamson.
trying to say. He writes in, greeting benches. I sent you pics a while back of my old-timey Revell 148 scale F106 when y'all were discussing fighting crappy kits. I'm posting on the Bench Facebook page pictures of my recently completed Revell 148 scale PCF Swift boat, which I've seen.
Yes, that's a nice build, that.
Yeah. The kit came with no interior at all, and the kit was a commission build with lots of scratch building. It fits in well what we're going to be talking about later on. Would you consider a show about scratch building? Well, it's funny you should say that, Jamie, because we've actually got somebody in here to talk about that later on. Okay. I did laugh when I saw this one. This is from Michael. And he writes in, "G'day Godfather, g'day Rocker, and g'day Old Timey."
Rocker. Oh, there you go.
I love the show. Have you ever considered the show about how many modelers become more knowledgeable about history than the average person? We get a reputation for being single-minded with a nice hobby, but I find that my knowledge and dinner party conversation have both improved due to my knowledge of history.
Yes.
Maybe have another war historian every once in a while so that we can all learn about the events that shaped what kits are made. Thanks, Michael. And it's funny you should say, 'cause we had, oh gosh, I've forgotten his name now. Al Murray on.
Al Murray, yes.
Yeah. And when we try to get those sort of people who are into that sort of thing, I look for people who also build hobbies as well. Mm-hmm. Build hobbies, you would get.
Build models.
Who also build models as well. So I'm actually deep into looking for someone at the moment, so we'll have to wait and see whether that comes through or not. So thanks very much for that, Michael. Next one, Patrick Hoff writes in, "Hello, I live in Maryland, USA, so not Virginia, but just a stone's throw away. Nothing like coming up with ideas for someone else to implement, but here it goes. I recently purchased a Venomous Vipers decal sheet for a 1/48 scale F16 from Aztec Models. I was really impressed, not just by the decals, but they also include documentation and 2 sheets of vinyl masks. Well, that's a bonus.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of good things from Aztec.
Have you?
Yeah. If you like Latin American stuff, that's the way to go.
The company's been around since 1997. My sense is they are not too well known. So why not invite them to do an interview and explain how the decal making business works? That's not a bad idea. And that's from Patrick Hoff, IPMS, District of Columbia chapter. And he says, "P.S. If you like this idea, I can probably come up with other things for you to do as well."
Sounds like a plan.
Oh, it does indeed. Next one is from Andy Rausch. 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 Andy writes in, and he says that Das Work is making a dry dock to go with their U9 kit.
Yes.
Apparently it's out in March. And he's saying Andy's hobby headquarters is reviewing it in their latest video. So if you want to pop along and have a look at that, go ahead and do it.
Yeah, I'm still waiting for that kit to hit the shores here.
You haven't?
The U9?
Is that 135th?
172nd.
172nd, okay.
Okay.
Bronco do the 135th scale U-boat.
Okay.
Which is freaking, I've got one, it's massive.
I was thinking
I'll never build it. I want to build it, but it's nearly a metre long.
I was scared by the thought of a dry dock in 135th. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Brad Belsham writes in, and he's also recently become a contributor to our Patreon, so thank you very much. And he's just wondering if we can do more armour stuff. Track talk, for instance, like different link and length versus rubber bands. And that's not a bad idea, though. We just did recently an armour just the last episode. So thanks very much for that, Brad. Next one is... Now, I had an email come in on the Facebook page, and I'm just going to have a hunt up for it because I'm not really prepared as usual.
You're not prepared?
I know.
That's a new one.
I know. I've got to find it somewhere. Gee, thanks very much. Barry Smith wrote in, and he's been doing some thinking about group buys to save on postage, and this is particularly from us here in Oz. And he's looking to see if anybody else is interested in purchasing some K-Colours paint from Indonesia and Ants products, AUNZ, from the US. And he's looking to see if there's anybody else here in Australia who wants to do that. And if they do, just send us an email to onthebench64@gmail.com.
I've heard a lot of good things about K Colours.
I've never heard of it before.
I have, yeah.
I have.
Yeah, apparently they're pretty good quality paints.
And that's it for the mailbag. So thanks very much, everybody, for writing in. And don't forget, if you want to send us an email, you can do so by sending us an email to onthebench64@gmail.com. Love hearing from you.
Yes, that we do.
Now, the Falcon is actually written in with a whole heap of new kits as well. Should we dive straight into that?
Yes. Let's see what the Falcon's purloined for us.
The Falcon's been very busy hunting up what's happening.
He's always busy.
Hi there to David, Ian, and the Geezer.
The Geezer.
How come the Falcon's calling you the Geezer?
Because he's old-timey.
I don't know.
Considering he's the youngest one of the group.
Yeah, I know. And I make that well known too.
All right, first of all, aircraft. Meng have announced they will be releasing another version of their Falcon D1 triplane. Not just a different decals, it's totally different kit and in a different scale. It's going to be 1/24 scale.
Correct, yes.
Wow. Apparently, it is another abandoned Wingnut Wings project. It makes you wonder what else they have up their sleeves. Pilot replicas are apparently working on a 1/48 scale de Havilland DH115 Vampire Trainer T11. They also have plans to do the T22, T55 and the SK58. The first clear props 1/72 scale Mohawks will be available soon. Gee, I must have missed that.
If it's clear prop, that's going to be a beautiful kit.
Oh,
Does that do the Claude?
Clear prop. Yeah, they do the small Claude. Yeah,
and it's a 1/72 scale, but it's like a 1/32 scale detail kit.
Yeah, I know.
In 1/72.
It's diabolical.
It's amazing. It is, like the engine alone is about 40 pieces or something. It's crazy.
Yeah, there's like, for example, there's a little window in the floor so that you can see through to the underside of the plane.
Yeah.
And they give you a little photo etch frame for that.
In 1/72.
On a Claude.
Yeah.
And a Claude's what? Probably about 3 inches long.
Yeah.
Apparently, the first off the rank will be the OV/JOV-1A, and in good news for fans of even smaller scales, Clearprop will also offer a 1/144 scale version of the Mohawk at some unspecified point in the future.
Ooh.
A&P models are showing CAD for a 1/72 scale version of Boeing's X-20 dinosaur spaceplane. Oh,
There's one for Dave.
Oh, I've got to get that. Oh, that's uber cool. All right, no worries, because that fits in with all my other space stuff, which is in that scale. So, I'm very impressed with that. Dora Wings have shown CAD renders of a 1/72 scale Nuruduran C64 Norseman. When people begged them for a 1/48th version as well, Dora said they couldn't oblige as they didn't have the capability at present to produce a model of that size. I've got no idea what a C64 is.
I have to
Awesome.
admit, when I listen to you guys and you do the new kits coming up, I spend a lot of time just jumping onto Google, putting in whatever that thing is.
What is it?
Anything up to about 1945, I kind of know what it is. After that,
Yeah,
I've got no
I'm the
idea.
same.
Well, it's funny because,
Well, there's also the fact that, if it's got any kind of remotely odd name, I can guarantee that Dave's going to mispronounce it, which is going to make it even harder for me to know what that is.
Okay. I am going to suggest that we get Julian to read out the new kits into the future.
Well, that sounds like an awful lot of trouble for me to go to on an early Saturday morning.
Oh, but he's quite happy to sit there and chuck stones at me. Well, there you go.
They're fun stones. They're not harsh stones, right?
Yeah, but they hurt.
Oh,
Yeah, you sound hurt.
precious.
In April this year, Trumpeter will release a 1/144th scale Xi'an H6K bomber. Oh, that'd be interesting.
That's exactly what you think. He doesn't know what it is.
Right now, I'd be Googling that. Well, I've got no idea. Yeah.
Micromere showing CAD renders of a 1/48 scale de Havilland DH112 Venom fighter. Well, that'd be good in that scale. Yeah. They're also working on a 1/44th scale. Oh, geez, I'm sure he does this fine. A Bison, a 3MS. I'm not even going to pronounce the manufacturer's name. MYASIS CHEV. Mr.
And every Russian that listens to us now is just throwing their headphones against the wall.
We've only got one listener in actually in Ukraine, so it's not technically Russia, it's Ukraine, and he's an Aussie anyway. So
no, he's a Kiwi.
Well, he's a Kiwi. Well, there you go.
He's a Kiwi, yeah.
Good old friend from across the ditch.
So he'd pronounce it weird anyway.
Let's move on to Armour. IBG models have released their catalogue for 2021. And here are a few highlights from their military vehicle section. These are all 135th scale. They're doing a 7TP Polish tank from World War II, a British Bedford QL refueler, a British Bedford QL tanker, and a World War I 75mm French field gun, 1897 model. I haven't built any armour kit, artillery pieces yet. I should get my head around that and do that.
Okay.
What
would you start with?
Probably one that I used in the army, a 105 howitzer, as a starting point. But some of the designs from World War One, you get all that interesting camouflage on it,
and they have the little wavy edging to the
and the black outline to it,
and the blocks on the wheels.
Yes,
different blocks on the wheels.
Yes. Yeah. Anyway, I'll think about that.
Dave's going to spend more money.
Still with IBG, I believe, in 172nd scale, there's an A10 Mark 1A British cruiser tank and a Scammell Pioneer SV1S, which is a breakdown recovery tractor.
Yeah.
Only renders of the Scammell at this point, so probably won't be released until later in the year. There will be a 72nd scale version of the Bedford QL tanker. And IBG have also listed several secret items, so there's more stuff to look forward to as the year progresses. For your information, the Falcon says, the 7TP Polish tank will come in premium and standard versions. Seem to recall reading that the premium version will include a crew and figures, and the 7TP kits are now available for pre-order from IBG Models website.
Where are they based?
Poland.
Yeah.
Poland.
Dragon Models have announced an all-new tool, 1/72nd scale Bushmaster protected mobility vehicle. There will be at least 2 boxings, a British SAS version and, of course, the good old Aussie version. That's interesting.
Who's making that?
Dragon.
In 72nd.
72nd scale.
72nd scale.
Bushmaster has to be one of our most, not popular, but successful armoured vehicles that we've produced ever.
But more useful than the Sentinel was.
Yes, true. Sabre Models, in cooperation with Takeom, will be releasing a 1/72nd scale D9R armoured bulldozer with slat armour, and the slat armour will be provided as PE. Oh my God! In 1/72nd scale, it makes hairs on the back of my neck stand up.
Makes me all giddy.
Depends on how complicated they do it, right? They could simplify it to some degree. You know how they make them look like ladders, and then you just rotate the horizontal
steps.
pieces.
Yeah,
like the stairs on ships. On ships.
Yeah.
Oh, well, they could do
that. Looks daunting, but it's actually not that hard.
Yeah, very true. Yeah. In another cooperative venture, Amusing Hobby and Malaysian hobby shop WHM are teaming up to produce a 1/35th scale kit of the Pendekar PT-91M Malaysian main battle tank. Well, that's interesting. Das Work will be releasing a 1/35th kit of the VK-45 Ram Tiger. I've got no idea.
Ram Tiger.
Now that is it's just a hull, and it's just got machine guns in it, no turret. Almost like it was a paper Panzer, I believe. It's got this real sort of funky sort of wedge shape to it, look to it.
Okay.
Is it like an engineering vehicle, like a recovery vehicle, or is it like a troop transport?
No, it was like a troop transport / troop protector just for machine gunners, which seems pretty stupid.
Pretty overkill
in 1940, 1944, 45, yeah. I think
It's like they ran out of turrets, and we'll just keep using the chassis.
I think the Germans had other problems to worry about in 1945 than to build a tank just for machine gunners.
Exactly.
Oh, gosh. That's quite funny, actually. Trumpeter 135th scale releases. Expected soon are a 135th scale German L4 500 truck with a 3.5 centimetre Flak 37 and also a Soviet Su-100U tank in 135th scale. You haven't seen a new one of them for quite a while.
No, not an Su-100.
No. Hobby Boss to release a 135th scale Leopard 2 with the TWMP, which is a mine plough. Speaking of Leopards, Border Models have announced a 172nd scale Leopard 2 A5/A6. Gee, lots of Leopard tanks coming out. Here's a little something different. Gecko Models have shown box art, I should say, for a 135th scale M400 light type 3 skid steer loader, otherwise known as a Bobcat. Actually, while it's not a Bobcat is a brand name, and this is a different thing from a different maker, but you get the idea. The box art shows a vehicle in desert camo, but there are plenty of opportunities for civilian markings. Moving on to civilian vehicles, Meng have announced a new tool 1/9th scale motorcycle, a BMW R9T. Not a motorcycle guy myself, but the CAD renders look terrific. It will be a very impressive model. And here is a sentence you don't hear very often. A new tool kit from Hella is about to be released.
What?
Wow.
What? Hang on. Dave needs to take a drink now. Compose yourself, Dave.
I've got the sweats just thinking about that. Oh, my God. It has been long teased, but Hella's 1/24th scale new tool, Renault Estafette, which is a van, is about to find a place on model store shelves soon. There'll be two versions, the civilian and the gendarme. I'm expecting big things. They sure have had plenty of time to work on it.
I didn't think Hella was still in business.
No.
Wow.
It's Hella. It's French.
That's all from the Falcon. Wow.
So no new ships coming out?
Well, funny you should say that. Now, I was looking at on the website, on a website recently, and our company that we love to hate, well, I love to hate anyway. Yeah, I'll only try and bring it up.
Yeah. And which company's that, Dave?
Revell.
Oh, look, Revell's latest stuff's not bad.
Really?
Yeah. You should build their 72nd scale S100.
Oh, well,
That's a great little ship.
to be fair, only Rebel Germany, which is the one that was the portion that was known for its good stuff, is left.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've built some Revell kits that have been absolutely fantastic, and I've built other ones that have been absolutely shocking. So let me try and just bring this open, and I'll move down to the Revell stuff. It's Revell. Here we go. Now this really grinds my gears.
Here we
You
go.
guys have no idea how much this grinds my gears. So Revell have announced the release of a twin ship kit model,
Twin ships.
which is the HMS Hood and the Bismarck 80th anniversary.
All right.
But check the scale. And if I could swear, I'd start swearing. One ship, so they're both in the same box. One ship is 1/700 scale, and the other one is 1/720th scale. Really?
So one you're going to have to put a bit further behind.
Really?
Behind on your shelf when you...
I mean, what the heck? Seriously?
Yeah, that's a bit silly in my opinion. If you're going to have two ships of that caliber in the same box, put them at least the same scale.
But they have announced the Space Shuttle 40th anniversary in 1/72nd scale, so I'm pretty keen on that one.
Yeah, you should be able to do it. It's age 13 plus.
Oh, you idiots.
It does look like a nice... It looks like a fairly detailed kit.
Oh, whoops. Sorry, what was that? What are you saying?
It actually looked like a pretty detailed kit.
Yeah. It'll be... Well. Anywho. So, how about we have a break and we'll come back and we'll unpack what Dave has to say about what he does for work. Staggers me. But anyway, we'll find out more about that. We'll be back after this very short break. Fine Scale Modeller is the world's most recognised and essential magazine for modelers and is available in all good newsagents and newsstands or wherever you purchase your magazines. Alternatively, go to their website www.finescale.com and subscribe to either a print edition or their digital edition. Go now. Go to www.finescale.com. And we're back to have an in-depth interview with David. G'day, David.
Hey, it's good to be here.
So I'm fascinated because it's funny, we got a mutual friend as well, a photographer mate as well.
Oh, who's that?
Matt.
Matt Wren? Okay.
Yeah, Matt Wren, yeah. So it's such a small world, actually. So I was quite amazed by that. But I was staggered. I came across you a couple of years ago. You had done a hot dog stand, was it, or something? Or
donut van.
Donut van, that's right. And I looked at this, and it was all scratch built, and I went, "Oh my god, jaw dropping!"
Thank you.
And and that sort of had the genesis of eventually get you on the show and have a chat how you go about sort of scratch building all your stuff. But let's take a step back. Let's have a bit of a history as to how you got to where you are doing modelling full time now as a full time job.
Yep. Okay. I've always built models ever since I was a kid. So, built stuff way back in the early 80s and kind of went away from it when I discovered girls for a while there.
As we all did.
As everyone did. And then came back to it in my late 20s. And I still love the world of model kits. I find it fascinating. But I guess after a while I realised, I've never served in the armed forces. Why am I building a Spitfire? I've never ridden in a Sherman. Why am I building a Sherman? But I loved the techniques that are involved. I loved the weathering and I loved the painting and, I do like making things in miniature. And I thought, look, I'd like to try scratch building. So the first scratch build I ever did, I had made some dioramas and things like that where I built basic structures and ruins and things like that to sort of tell a story around a tank or a plane and things. But the first scratch build I ever built was a science fiction piece, which I entered into Expo a few years back. And it was a kind of hovering craft, kind of a mix of an oil rig and a spaceship, and it was a bit sort of Industria Mechanica.
I remember that one. Yes,
that was yours.
That was mine. Yeah,
yes, I remember that.
Yeah. So that was my first ever scratch build, and it was built entirely out of a 2-litre soft drink bottle, just an upturned soft drink bottle. The only commercial bit on it was I bought a 1/35th civilian figure to stand at the top of it, and there were a couple of tyres from old auto kits that I had built when I was a kid that were sort of tied to the side like bumpers against, like on a tugboat. But the rest was all scratch built. And it got a first in the scratch built category, which I was pretty chuffed with at the time because I'd had a couple of years where I was entering, this is going to sound really parochial, but I was entering things in the competition and I wasn't getting anywhere, and I was just getting really frustrated and getting kind of sour grapes. And Julian, total respect to you. One year you kind of reached out to me online and said, look, I'll happily give you some advice. And it was a really decent thing to do. You come across as a hard ass on this show, but you're actually a really decent human being.
Stop that! All right, I can't let that get out.
Ruin his reputation.
But yeah, it was just it was really some good advice.
I do remember talking to you about that particular piece of yours, the Industrial Mechanica style of thing. I remember talking to you in front of it, and we had a chat about it. And I've also had to talk to you about the judging process and how they judge things. And
it was doing my head in for a couple of years there. And I think I've now that I got one, I've kind of gone past that, which I guess is a healthy thing, I think. But I also did a year where I volunteered as a judge, and I learned a lot.
Oh, you do, don't
about
you?
The process.
You learn so much just one evening.
Yeah,
you basically you add 30% to your skill.
Yeah,
and we've said that so often. Put your hand up to be a volunteer judge. You learn so much more.
And at Melbourne Model Expo, you always get rewarded with pizza.
Yes, you do, yes.
I won't say that's why I did it, but it's part of it. But I think for the hobby as a whole, you've got to be open to criticism, and it's
exactly.
it's the best way to improve is listening to critique. It really is. So I built my first scratch build, and it was well received, and most importantly, I was really happy with it. Like, it took a year of working at nights. I had a day job. It took a year on just one project, which kind of did my head in a bit. But at the end of it, I thought, okay, I can scratch build. I can produce something that I'm really happy with, and I can translate what's in my head to a 3D object in the real world. And that gave me the impetus to keep going. And then a couple of years ago, my partner, a role came up for her, a job came up for her, and she said, look, I'd like to go for this. She'd been working part-time. We have a young daughter. And she said, I'd like to go for this, but it would mean I'd be working more hours, and I was kind of ready to step back a bit from the workforce. And so I thought I'd try building scratch-built buildings. I thought it would be pretty niche at first. I thought it would be of interest to model nerds and maybe some architecture nerds, and that's about it. And I thought, I'll give it a go. What's the worst that can happen? And 2 years down the track, I'm still doing it as a full-time job, which is great.
Wow, to pivot from your hobby to a full-time job just blows my mind.
Yeah, especially doing something you love.
Yeah,
It's pretty satisfying. I won't lie. Yeah.
So does this mean that you can buy models and write them off for tax purposes?
There's an idea.
Sadly, no. I wish. I still do buy models, but I don't build many models now. Like, I think in the last 12 months, I've built 2 model kits. Both of them were really old school Tamiya kits. So one was a 1/35th Leopard 1, that's like a 1974 release.
Yep.
And the other was a 148 Japanese seaplane, a roof. And I did them both just on weekends, so that's my modelling time as opposed to my building miniature artworks time, which is through the week.
Yep.
And it's still fun to me, which is great.
So the miniature artworks that you build, it's mostly buildings, is it not?
Yes, yeah, pretty exclusively buildings. Yes.
And it's a representation of or a direct copy of a building. It's either used to be part of the Melbourne landscape or still is part of the Melbourne landscape.
Yes.
Yep.
So I started off just building buildings in my local area. I thought, these are the ones I like, little and obscure and beaten up, weathered old buildings. So generally I don't build beautiful architectural showpiece models like you'd see at a display home or a big sort of housing redevelopments. I build little obscure places. And I started off just doing ones nearby me. So the first one I ever did was a pigeon clubhouse, a racing pigeon clubhouse, which is on just a little tiny suburban street near my house. And I liked it. The reason I chose it for the first one was it's quite a simple building and there are no windows. So I thought that's an easy one to start with. If I can do that, then I can do anything.
Yeah.
And from there it's gone on. I've probably done about 18 of them since. Each one takes about 3 weeks, and I work on them between dropping my daughter at school at 9 o'clock, picking her up at 3, Monday to Friday.
Wow.
And they're all buildings that I love. I started off working in about 1/24th, 1/25th scale. I've kind of grown a bit easier with that rule over time because that's fine. The space I have to work in is quite a small space. It's basically just one desk. I've got a room that's kind of a library stroke, hobby room stroke, man cave, and the actual bench space I have is quite limited. So I've limited myself to about 40 centimetres in width for any particular build. And basically that's a combination of works on the space I have to work with, and also I think it's a good size to display. So all of them, I build them ultimately to hopefully sell them, to make a living out of it. And I figure anything bigger than about 40 centimetres, who's got space to put that in their house? Yeah.
And just out of interest, and we were talking about this while we're having breakfast, about how you go about sort of recouping the costs, and actually making a living out of it. I said, well, do you charge by the hour or do you charge by the piece, and how do you sort of get to arrive at a price that you're going to sell the piece at?
I do charge by the piece. I don't charge by the hour. So I do a mix of commissions and just building pieces. When I don't have a commission to produce, I build a piece just for something that I love, and hopefully someone else will love it enough to buy it. So generally, they're about usually about $3,000 each, and that's about 3 to 4 weeks' work. I think if I'd sat down and worked out per hour, it's probably not worth
You do
thinking
not
about.
want to do that. You do not. Trust me, you do not want to do that. It's too depressing when you think of it that way.
Yeah. My partner is an author, or was an author, and she worked out to be about 50 cents an hour when she got paid for books. So
it's not much.
Creative industries, it's tough when you think about it that way.
Yeah.
But I also realize how incredibly privileged I am to do this. I've taken what I love to do, and it's now my full-time job for the last 2 years, and I couldn't be happier. It's amazing.
So talk us through the actual process where you either get a commission or you see something that catches your eye. How do you take that concept in your head and actually then translate it to a finished kit or a finished model, I should say?
Generally, I'll go and see the real thing. If it still exists, I'll go and visit the real thing, and I'll take sketches and photos and measurements. And then I'll come back to my workspace and kind of scale it all down to a size that I can work out. So, like I said, when I started, just scaled everything down to 1/24th, 1/25th scale. But now I tend to, quite often I'll design it. Because I used to be a graphic designer, I'm pretty comfortable using computer programs. So I'll take a photo of it and then kind of draw a blueprint of it effectively on the screen, and then I'll scale that to the exact final size I want it to be. So some of them I don't even know what scale it is. I can't tell you if it's 1/30th, 1/32nd. I'll just say this piece needs to be 40 centimeters because that's how big it is on the final thing. So if that's 40 centimeters, this doorway is 3 centimeters, that window is 8 centimeters, etc. So that's how I kind of work out the spaces. And then just start building. So the materials I use, for most buildings, I make them out of blue modelling foam. So it's probably got some proper term out there for it, but that's certainly what I look for when I need to restock, is just jump on eBay and look up blue modelling foam. And that's something that I learned from the world of dioramas. You'd see people carving wrecked Berlin buildings in 1945 or bridges and things. And that's where I started using that from. So I'll use that. I'll use a mixture of plastic cards, some balsa wood, and just a range of materials. Over time, I've kind of honed my repertoire of what things are good for what final results. So corrugated iron roofs. I've got this beautiful tool that I got from a model railway store, which is
Burnell's.
Yes. And it's just this gorgeous piece of 3D printed plastic.
Is it orange?
It's lime green.
Lime green. Because one I saw was like a clear orange.
Yeah. So this is sort of a transparent lime green. And you just buy a barbecue foil tray from Coles and cut it to size, put it on that, scrape it along, and then suddenly it's got corrugations in. And it's just a matter of finding tools and finding materials that will give you that scale effect in the final result.
I've tried out that corrugating tool. I don't have one, but I have tried one out, and I found that you do a couple of passes and then you flip it over.
Oh, okay.
And then you do another couple of passes, and that stops it from bowing.
Oh, I'm going to have to do that.
You ever get it starts to bow?
They bow every time, and I just use my fingers to bend it back.
Just flip it the other way. Just flip it upside down, and then give it another pass, and it straightens it out straight away.
Mate, you've just increased my productivity by 10%. The check's in the mail.
No worries, mate.
So this blue foam stuff that you use, I can't think of the correct name of it now.
It's like something like high density.
Yeah, it'd be like a high density foam, I'd say.
Yeah. Something like that, yeah.
So you can carve it and...
it just carves really nicely.
That's my question. How do you carve it, and what do you carve it with?
I've got, when I first started out, so I was telling one of you guys earlier, I'm not a big one for buying tools, specialized tools. I'll generally try and dodgy my way through using whatever I've got already. And sometimes that's great, and sometimes it really bites me. But at first I started cutting it with just a scalpel or an extendable blade, and then for really big chunky pieces I'd cut it with a bread knife. And the results were as good as you would expect by cutting foam with a bread knife.
Oh yeah.
So I invested
in big cleanup time.
And bits of blue foam in my bread as well. So I bought myself a hot wire cutter, and that was a revelation to me of, oh wow, look at how easily it cuts. So cutting it, I use a hot wire cutter. To sculpt it, scalpels, chiseling tools. To do brickwork is one of my favorite things, and I've got a peg, a wooden peg, then I wrapped a piece of brass around the end of it, and that's kind of a brick shape, and you just stamp that over and over and over into the blue foam, and it gives you this really beautiful brick pattern. And it's really slow and kind of zen process while you do it. But
Do you heat that brass bit, or you just push it in and it just the indentation?
Yep, just push it in and it takes it really nicely. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's nice and dense, but it's not too rigid. So it does. The downside of it is that if you bang it against things, you'll get a dent in it.
Yep.
And painting is a bit of a pain. I like to use enamel paints just because that's what I've always used. And any kind of solvent or enamel paint really bites into that foam and it sort of dissolves it. So I've had to invest in some enamel paints, which I don't like as much.
Have you ever thought of giving it a coat of acrylic lacquer first?
Oh, I haven't tried a lacquer. I've tried MIG one-shot primer, but it's not great.
Yeah.
It's pretty rubbish.
You want something that's going to get in there and then leave a barrier.
Yeah.
So, because I know the problem is it's so absorbent.
Yep.
And so, so I was thinking maybe if you put like an acrylic lacquer over the top, which isn't going to affect the foam.
That's a good idea, actually.
Because enamel, enamel works on anything.
Yeah.
I've found you can paint enamel on nearly oil if you want to. It's the paint enamel just sticks. Whereas if you've done the other way around, acrylics never usually like to stick to enamel, but for some reason enamel will stick.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to try that.
So if you give it like a lacquer of clear, just to seal it, and
cool.
then you won't have I reckon you'll probably save half your paint.
Yeah, perfect. That sounds great. Because that's one thing I find is because it's this really bright blue colour.
Oh yeah, and it leaches through everything.
It totally does.
Yeah.
If you're painting a light coloured building,
that last one, yellow.
5 or 6, yeah.
Oh god, imagine putting yellow over the top of blue. Oh,
You'd get green.
Yeah.
Yes.
How many coats of white did you need first?
But what amazes me is your attention to detail, and I sit and look at one of your subjects that you've completed, and I go, how did he do that? For example, like on one building, and I forget which one it is, it's got the actual lettering of the company or the used to be in it, and you've got like almost looks like raised lettering to me on there.
Oh, Pellegrini's.
Yeah, that's it.
The restaurant.
Pellegrini's, the restaurant.
So Pellegrini's has a big neon sign down the side.
Yeah.
And that one, it was a lot of work. So it involved getting some solder, some really malleable solder wire, and just painstakingly shaping it into this really beautiful cursive P and the cursive letters of the rest of it, and then getting bits of wire and holding it aloft from a background. And it was a lot of work. I've started doing a tiny bit of 3D printing. I don't own a 3D printer, but I've got a mate who does. So I do the CAD work, I design the letters, and raised lettering, like sort of relief lettering on shop fronts. I will use 3D lettering for that, 3D printing for that. Everything else I try and do by hand, just because it's what I love and it's what I set out to do. And I think it's what, at the risk of sounding like a wanker, it's what elevates it from being a model to being an artwork, if you want to use that kind of
yes, I know what you mean,
terminology.
Yeah.
But that's the only bit where I do 3D printing. Yeah.
I don't think I've got the artistic capacity to sort of go and build, like, for example, you do a street light or something like that, and and it looks like a street light. If I tried making it, it looked like something that a 12-year-old has tried the craft. I don't
practice, Dave.
Well,
Practice.
no, but I'm just astounded how you can take just bits of plastic and bits of wire, and you actually have a model representation of what something in real life is. If I tried to do that, I'd be hopeless.
The flip side of that, and this is how I feel now, having done this for a few years, is I find a model kit a little bit boring now, and I've just alienated your entire audience. But I find, just snipping pieces off and putting them together, it's like, oh, yeah, okay. Like, I like being able to produce something that it wasn't there before I did it, and it hasn't been produced by someone else, and it doesn't exist anywhere else in the world except for this one that I've just handcrafted. The flip, and the sad relation to that is that when you've got to make 5 of them, I wish I could just snip 5 pieces off a sprue, and it was done. But I find it really satisfying to take all these weird little bits and pieces, and I'm a hoarder, and I've got boxes full of just junk and bits of wire and bits that have fallen off old printers, and I find it really satisfying to kind of kit bash those all together and make something from nothing. It's what I really enjoy about the process. And it's when I add those details that it comes to life for me. So the most boring part of it is when you're just building the walls and it's just a wall and you've got like the basic structure there, but there's nothing interesting. It's when you start adding those downpipes or those little NBN boxes on the front of a building, or you're putting the tiles on the frontage, or you're doing the guttering that's falling off the roof. That's the bit where it comes to life for me, and that's the part that I find really most enjoyable.
But what also makes your subject stand out is the paint finish you do on the end to bring it to life. I mean, having built it, it's one part of it, but actually painting it to look exactly like its real life representation, the way you do it's just absolutely astounding.
Oh, thanks, Dave. Thank you.
I'm not quite sure how you do it. There must be a bit of magic in there somewhere.
Some black magic. I guess it's having good references, so it's really closely observing what's out there, and that's what you hear people talk about with models as well. Is get a good reference of that tank or that plane, and then you can replicate the weathering. And I think that's gold advice. If you've got a couple of good references, you just follow it as closely as you can. And there's always a little bit of room for artistic license, but I think as long as one of the most wonderful parts of what I do is at the end, I'll take a photo of the original and I'll try and take a photo of my miniature from the same angle, and then put them side by side and just compare to see how close I got it. And there's always inevitably a couple of little hits and misses, but the paint finish is where it all comes together, and it comes from being a strange collection of foam and balsa and tin into looking like a building. And the bit I love the most is weathering, and particularly things like chipping with hairspray technique, and it's when it's kind of slightly out of your control that I love it the most. You've wet it, you're chipping away, and you think, what's going to happen? Is it going to work? Or you do a big oil wash, and you kind of think, I hope it doesn't eat through the paint underneath it. And that's the bit where I find, it's a little bit out of your hands. It's in the hands of the modelling gods, and that's kind of fun.
So have you actually ruined anything you've been building because you tried something like that and it went wrong, or do you try or do you try it on something else first and then apply it to the subject you're doing at the time?
Yeah, just the last model I built. So I've just finished a boathouse. The one before that was an Italian restaurant here in Melbourne City. And I thought, I'm just going to try doing an oil wash and just see if it doesn't eat into that blue foam like I was talking about a minute ago. And it ate into the blue foam.
Start again.
I think I'd had a drink and it was late at night. I was like, I'm just going to try that and see what it looks like.
And that's the worst thing.
You look at it in the morning and go, that actually just dissolved about a nice stripe on top of a ledge.
I should have just gone to bed.
Yeah.
Yes. See, when Ian has a drink, he ends up buying a lot of stuff online.
I'm terrible. Can't help myself.
Oh, jeez. So what is your sort of next step from here? Because you've sort of carved yourself out a niche now, and within Melbourne, you're certainly extremely well known for doing this. Is there sort of anything? Is there another lily pad you can see ahead that you want to step onto, or?
So I started off doing like the inner west of Melbourne, which is where I live, and now I've moved on to more CBD locations, and I've done one building in Sydney because I had an exhibition in Sydney. So it blows me away. I had an exhibition here in Melbourne last March, just before coronavirus shut everything down. And about 4 months ago, I had an exhibition in Sydney, so I had to drive to the border and hand over my artworks to the gallery people, and they'd driven down from Sydney, and then they drove home because we weren't allowed to cross the border from New South Wales to Victoria. So I had an exhibition there, and I've built one Sydney piece. So I guess I want to start building more, expanding my geographical horizons, and choosing subjects that aren't necessarily right close to where I live. I'd like to have another exhibition soon. I've got one coming up a bit later this year where I'm part of a group show. And it blows me away that, in my head, I'm making models, and it blows me away that people, normal people will come and look at them. You go to Expo and there's lots of model people looking at models, and that makes sense. But when normal people, non-modeling people come to see them, that's really eye-opening to me.
It's special.
Yeah. So I guess that's probably the next step, is trying to have, another one of those later this year and see if I can tempt more normal people. Not freaks like us.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. Like, you're in that area of the hobby that appeals to the normies.
Yes.
Normies. The normies.
Yeah, that's a gaming sort of reference. Yeah, in gaming culture, they call people who don't play games normies.
Well, we're not normies.
No, we're not normies at all.
But I've met some amazing people through it. So when I had my exhibition, I met a lot of people who were just, architecture people who liked old buildings. I met people who just liked the history of the area. I met lots of, heaps of pensioners came in and said, I remember that building when it was a dairy, blah, blah, blah. And that kind of stuff is really rewarding to me to get extra background and to sort of, chat to other people about it. I met a whole lot of people from, I can't remember what they're called. The organisation they're part of is VAME, V-A-M-E, and it's the Victorian Association of Miniature Enthusiasts, I think.
Oh, okay.
And it's basically, it seems to me that men build models of killing machines, so tanks and planes and warships and stuff, and women tend to build kind of dollhousey stuff. Mm-hmm. And it's just this whole world that I knew nothing about. But yeah, if you Google VAME and they're just out there and it's, all these really lovely women and they build shops and furniture and stuff, and it is quite dollhousey, but it's really charming. And it's weird to me that there's these two really strict, gender lines where what you build as a hobby in a small way is dictated by who you are.
Yeah, like the old way boys wear blue, girls wear pink. Yeah.
And everyone still loves little things, and that's kind of cool. I like it. Yeah.
So, how would you, if somebody was to come up to you and say, "Well, I want to build a building, a representation of a building," where would you advise them to start and step them through the process as to how to actually do that?
Good question. I guess first step would be make sure you've got references of some kind, so whether that's sketches or photos. Whether they've got sketches or photos, that's probably your first starting point. The next thing would be think about how to best build the structure. So the one I've just built now, it's a weatherboard building. I used wood because it was going to give me that nice wood grain.
So you actually used wood to represent the
weatherboards.
The weatherboards on the structure.
On the boat builders, I did. Yes, yeah. So I just went to a craft store and I got those great big paddle pop sticks. And trimmed them down to size, and they worked really well. So I guess think about what final texture, what final material you want it to look like, and then take it from there. If you're just starting out, you can't go wrong with like paper with styrene strip and plastic sheeting. That's going to be the closest to a model kit in construction techniques and glues and things like that.
And everybody's used to using that type of material anyway. There's nothing going to be there. There's nothing there that's going to come as a shock or a surprise to anybody.
Exactly, and painting techniques are the same, and there's nothing really too crazy there. And that's how I did my first one, and you just take it from there. It's and part of the joy of it is lying awake at night thinking, how am I going to replicate that roof, or how am I going to replicate that effect? And that's that's part of what I find really satisfying.
You find that a joy? It annoys the hell out of me when you're trying to get to sleep and all you get in the back of your brain is, how am I going to tackle that problem tomorrow? And it's like, I'm not going to tackle it if I'm not going to get any sleep.
Yeah, that's how most people feel about photo etch.
Why?
What?
Why?
No, photo etch is our friend.
Yeah,
it's his friend.
Didn't you know that, Julian?
It's his friend. I imagine there's plenty of people out there who don't think it's their friend.
Oh no, there's plenty of people who hate it.
See, I feel that way about like link tracks. I'm never going to make link tracks. I've done it once.
That's zen.
Funny you should say that. I'm building a French World War I tank at the moment, and these tracks are driving me nuts because normally when I do individual link tracks, I can get into a flow or a zen moment as I'm building them, and I find it really enjoyable. But the way these ones are put together, it's doing my head in.
Because they're small and narrow?
No, not so much that. It's just that the way they sort of interlink, and you kind of do the link part, and then the track sort of attaches to the bottom part of it. It's really weird, and I've only done about 7 individual links at the moment so far, and that took me nearly 2 hours the other day. And I'm trying to find the process in which, or a way of doing it where I can get a flow and sort of get in that real sort of zen. And these ones are just defeating me, so I'm going to have to just bulldoze my way through and just do it,
Oh, well, sometimes it's like that.
Yeah.
Like some things in modelling are just like that,
Yeah, and they are, and that's where you have you put some tunes on and listen to some music and, Pink Floyd or something like that, and then or put a nice podcast on and have that in the background, and And that sort of helps you get through those hard times in modelling.
Hard times of modelling. Hard times of modelling. I've heard it all now.
But there definitely are. Like, there are definitely moments where you look and you think, well, I do this for pleasure.
Yeah, exactly.
How masochistic am I? And like I was saying, the last two I've built were 1970s kits. And there's an element of, like, one, nostalgia, but two, there's got to be a masochism in there because, I could buy a brand new kit and it would be a lot easier and there's a lot less cleanup. And I remember the tank barrel on the Leopard, it was bowed and the seam was terrible. It was like a 2-piece tank barrel. And I considered buying a replacement, a turned metal piece. I'm like, no, my innate cheapness kicked in. I'm not going to defeat this.
So the old Tamiya kit, was it that old that actually had the slots at the bottom of the hull that were open?
For the engine, for the motorised engine.
Yeah. So that is definitely 70s.
Yeah, and again, so nostalgia, I wanted to build something like it would have been when I was a kid starting out. And I wanted to challenge myself and see, look, can I take a crappy old moulding and make it up to modern standards? And I think I came close.
You're speaking to the converted. That's my current project. Crappy old 48 scale monogram Marauder. Yeah. And I'm going to try and make it into something that Edward produced.
Yep.
That's going to take a lot of work.
Yeah, so there's beauty in that. I think, again, hard times of modelling, like that's making life hard for yourself.
Yeah.
But the sense of satisfaction.
Exactly. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
So you got to draw the line.
I've done this.
Yeah.
And that's the way you look at it. You go, I beat this.
Yes.
I created this out of that.
Yep.
I respect where you're both coming from for that, but I look at my stash and it's huge stash, and I haven't got time to sort of sit and fettle a crappy piece of plastic. I want something that's going to build nicely straight away, and they're going to enjoy the process, and then I can get to the painting and the finishing, so I can move on to the next one. Mm-hmm. I ain't got enough time left in my life to be building some crappy 1960s monogram kit and trying to bring it up to a 2021 standard.
I think you have to draw the line somewhere. And for me, my personal no way, no how is Airfix or Italeri. I'm just not touching either of those because I'm not that much of a masochist. Those two are just on my verboten list.
Yeah, I kind of get. Yeah. Like I get that. There are also some in like a Rebels and a Academies lineup. They're a bit in that sort of zone,
Yeah, and the old Eschi kits.
Oh, like there's like lots of little like miscellaneous European manufacturers that have sort of gone bust over the years that sort of in that category, And
that's where the pure joy of, say, building a Tamiya or a Bandai kit just come into it. Or even, I should say, a Games Workshop kit, because you just slap them together and just move forward and with the painting process. They're great.
Yeah. They
really are.
Plus, you're not restricted to what colours you can go.
Oh, yeah. I'm not restricted to rivet counting. I don't have to stress whether, it's what I'm building is going to be, criticised because you got 6 bolts instead of 4 on there or something like that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. That's a really important thing. Like, I think part of why I wanted to get into scratch building before I had any ideas about building houses and buildings and making a living out of it. Part of the reason I wanted to do scratch building was just to get away from that rivet counting element of the hobby. It just if you let it will do your head in, and if you listen to the rivet counters, it'll do your head in. If that's important to you, power to you, good luck to you. I respect the discipline that's involved, but I've just I've had too many conversations where someone will say that's the wrong shade of Panzer Grey, and life's too short for that. And so I thought, well, with that sort of make believe Industria Mechanica inspired thing, that sci-fi one, I thought no one can tell me that this is wrong because it's totally in my imagination.
And it's funny with those people who say, oh, that's the wrong shade of Panzer Grey and everything. Well, hang on. Because I used to be in the military, and I don't even remember what the right colour green was that, our armoured personnel carriers were painted. They were just green to me, I was busy doing my other stuff to sort of, rather than take notice of that. Yeah. So for somebody to come along and say, a tank that was built in 1945, well, the shade's slightly off on that one there, Sunshine. Really? Who's going to know?
Yeah.
And once you put weathering and everything on it as well, and the environmentals that affecting it, and
and also field applied camouflage, where they cut the paint with petrol or oil or whatever they can get their hands on.
And the sun coming up in the east in winter versus the sun coming up in the east in summer.
Yeah, different.
I thought you were going to say something coming up in the west then. No. So anyway, what's interesting I find in the direction of this conversation at the moment is that you've gone full circle now, because you've gone from the river counting side of things through to the I'm breaking away from reality completely, and now you've come back around to the start where you're making realistic buildings.
Yeah, I guess I hadn't actually considered that. That's really spot on. Yeah, weird.
I also had another thought. So I think part of the reason why your work appeals to normies, as I like to call them.
I love that. I'm running with that from now on.
Yeah. It's good, isn't it? Is because, like, if you look at, like, the sort of what goes on social media these days, you know, with, like, you know, young 20-something people posting stuff on Instagram, they'll take photos of themselves on holiday or in, like, urban locations. You know, they'll go to that street in Melbourne where there's all the graffiti on the walls, and they'll take photos of themselves posing in front of that stuff because they want to show themselves with urban culture, you know, landscapes and things like that. Mm-hmm. And yours is basically that, except 3-dimensional, right?
Yeah.
And something you can take away with you and put on your shelf and look at it and display it. Yeah.
Someone said to me once, they were asking about, you know, who buys these and, you know, why would you do this sort of thing? And then they said, this is the sort of thing that if it's a building that you love, they're talking about commissioning a piece. And they said, if it's a building that you love, that's the sort of thing that when you're an old person and you're living in a retirement home and you can only bring a few things with you into your little tiny room, that will be the sort of thing that you take with you. And basically you've got the house that you lived in your room wherever you go from then on. And it's, you know, it's a really
so every time you look
capsule.
at it, you get the memories.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, see, this is really interesting because, you know, on one hand, in this scenario, you're an old person in a nursing home, and you're like, check out this $3,000 thing that I bought way back. I sold all my other things, but this thing's not worth as much as when I paid for it. But it's worth something to him, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I guess I try not to put price on it too much. Like, I think, again, I'm not a sort of art wank kind of person. You know, I can't talk the art talk, but I choose things that I find beautiful. So, you know, hopefully the people who like my aesthetic are the people who'll commission a piece from me. You know, if you don't like old and run down, I'm probably not the person to talk to. But yeah, it's just satisfying to take something that I find beautiful. And I guess that's where I stepped away from model kits was, you know, I still find them fascinating. I can listen to you guys talk about them and I go, oh, that's cool. I still Google the obscure, you know, modern jets that you talk about. I still find, you know, war machines and killing machines interesting, but I do find the buildings around me more beautiful and more personally satisfying to make. And I guess that's where I stepped away from model kits is, you know, I like them, but not as much as I like this rundown old power station near my house.
Yeah,
know?
I mean, I think we can all appreciate that sort of thing, especially when these days all the modern buildings are made out of slabs of concrete and glass.
Slab construction, terrible.
No character to them.
No.
I built one building that was quite modern. It was, you know, sort of 10 years old, really slabby and lots of glass and stuff like that. And it was really hard, like just from a personal craft discipline perspective, it's really hard because you can't just slap some worn paint on it and say, that's where the original bricklayer had a bad day. It's, you know, it's the equivalent of, you know, building a tank and then saying, it's battle damage when you hide your dodginess. On a really slick modern building, there's nowhere to hide. So all your angles have to be 90 degrees and everything has to really line up. And that's another reason I like building old places. There's a little bit of room to hide. Yeah.
Plus you got the sag here and there. Like
the character.
More character, more personality. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
Now here's the thing, because so you're a miniature artist or an artist in miniature.
Well, he's not actually very small. He's taller than all of us.
It's quite funny. Where's the line from when you're a modeler to when you're an artist? Or where's the line where some of the, you know, stuff that we see in our sort of world a model into a bit of art?
I think the line from when you're a modeler into an artist is, I think, I'm not 100% on this, who knows, but I think it's when you start appealing to normies, for want of a better term.
Okay.
I think, you know, if you can get the general public interested in what you're producing, then I think you can, you know, in theory, call yourself an artist. But the second part of your question, you know, when does a model become art? Your guest last week, I can't remember his name, but that tiger that he sliced in two on the rail cars.
Yep.
That to me was art. That was just beautiful. I've seen model kits produced into finished pieces of work that I would call art. I think there's definitely art in what we all do.
Yeah.
And every single one of your listeners, when they slap the paint onto that finished product, there's an element of art in there. And some people do 100% elevate it to the level of art. I would not deny that for a second.
It's a blurry line anyway.
It is a blurry line, but it's always an interesting line and an interesting conversation to have, because it always,
Well, I think we all want to be recognised for our efforts and not sort of pushed to the side and labelled the weird guys who play with their little things, Like, how many modelers out there have wives that have no appreciation for their hobby? Oh, please take your things into the back room of the house, darling.
Yeah, well, I think they're few and far between, and you hear about them.
They're the majority. What are you talking about?
No. Certainly in my experience, they're the minority.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You've got an unusual experience there, Dave.
No, well, that's true, perhaps.
He's lucky.
But
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Like, it comes back to that subject matter again of, why are we building killing machines? And some people do find that distasteful is perhaps the word. Confronting is a better way. Yeah, better way of putting it. And I think, it's very much the subject matter. And like I said, I find it fascinating. I'm looking on your walls here right now, and there's framed pictures of beautiful fighter planes and bombers. And I look at them, I go, that's an amazing building. That's an amazing building. That's an amazing airplane. And I think about it, that's built to drop bombs on people. And I think that is perhaps part of the issue of. I don't think modelling is seen as an antisocial hobby at all.
No.
But I think it's seen as a kind of nerdy hobby, and I embrace my nerd. I get my nerd on all the time. I love it. But I think the general public sort of looks at it and goes, well, why are you building things that are representations of things that are meant to kill people?
Yeah, but there's a large segment of the hobby too that does cars and trucks and sci-fi, and I'm into real space as well at the moment as well. And,
yeah, that's true.
And the Warhammer stuff. Although the Warhammer stuff is pretty grisly.
That's the extreme.
Well, yes, but it's. I don't know. For me, it's I look at the representation of something that's designed and built. I mean, I like the lines of a Sherman tank, for example.
Yeah.
And I always have. I don't know why. Just something appeals to me. Never built one yet, but I just like the lines.
You've never built a Sherman?
No.
Really?
Yeah, I know.
Wow.
Shame.
Shame.
I like the
Sherman shaming.
I like building submarines because the simplicity of the complexity of the actual design of what it's built for really amazes me. Same with ships, I find them eminently fascinating. The different hull forms, that's why I like building full hull rather than borderline. I like to see the entire hull and, how each ship is different in its shape from the other one because they've got different designs.
And how they progressed through the ages.
Yeah, I mean, some are designed to go fast, others are designed just to float, to be a gun platform, and you can see that in the hull, the shape of the hull, for example. And then how they choose to do sort of the weapon mounts on the actual ships and why they did that. And there's always reasonings behind why. You got A, B, and turret, and you got X and Y turret on the back, or just one single turret, or where the Brits did this weird thing and had all the turrets on the front with the superstructure at the back. And it's just the different. I mean, it's like you can get a room full of people and say to them, "Okay, draw me a bike." So you get 100 people and you ask them to draw a bike. Everybody knows what a bike looks like, but you're going to have 100 different versions of something that's really super simple, isn't it?
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do.
And it's the same when you look at modelling or apply modelling as well. It's a representation of 100 or 1,000 different ways to build an aircraft. At the end of the day, an aircraft's going to have a wing and some thrust, and that's it.
Yeah.
And yet we're looking at the posters on the back wall here, and there's myriad different ways you can build an aircraft. And each one is different from each other.
And some of them are more aesthetically beautiful than others. Some of them are plug ugly. And some of them, that's a gorgeous machine. And the engineering that went into it, you got to love that.
Some of them you like because they look ugly.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny. Ugly's got a beauty all of its own.
It does, yeah.
Like that French. The
You don't need to go any further than that. There's a lot of ugly French things out there.
No, the Americans built this one. The Martin built in the 20s, 30s.
Oh, the 1B or whatever it was.
Yes.
With that really weird domey turret thing at the front.
Oh, I'd love to have a modern day version of that kit. I reckon it would be excellent to build that.
But there is beauty in ugly. Like one of my favourite kits that I've ever built is a 132nd Stuka. And it's just, it's a really mean, really predatory looking aircraft.
Lots of angles too with a Stuka, lots of angles.
And no one would ever describe it as beautiful, but there's something amazing to it.
It looks sinister.
Yeah, it does look sinister. Yeah.
Yeah, there's some weird stuff out there.
It sure is. All right, I'm just trying to think about any other questions that anybody else would be interested in hearing about what you do or how you do it. I think we've pretty much covered the whole gamut, really. Unless you can think of anything else that we've missed or something you want to make a comment on.
No, I don't think so.
Break then pause, long silence.
I've seen work in a similar vein to yours come out of like Japan and Hong Kong and stuff like that, and they like to do the little tiny ramen shop or something like that.
Yep.
Yeah, I've seen those have gotten around the internet quite a bit because obviously people like Japan and people like that look, the very hyper urban look. The sort of the small shop in the Japanese metropolis looking thing.
Yeah.
Do you reckon at some point you'll get to that point where your work's catching the international audience? Because I think you've got like a big Australian audience because we can see that's uniquely Australian, right?
Yeah. I hope so. Long term, I hope that this continues. I hope I don't have to go back to working in a desk job. I do think I'll continue making Australian subjects because it's what I know and it's what I love. I've considered doing milk bars and fish and chip shops and stuff like that. Like I'm spoilt for choice. And I think the hard part for me, like I actually find the building quite... I was going to say not challenging, and that's not the right way to put it because I do try and challenge myself with each build and do something a little bit different. Slowly teaching myself how to build simple electrical circuits to put lights inside to show the interior and stuff. And my next one, I'm building a really wide building, so there's a whole lot of challenges involved in that. So I do try and challenge myself with each build, but I think the hardest part for me now is choosing the subjects that are going to get that sort of traction, that are going to make people interested. And it seems, there are certain things that really do seem to have that broad appeal or really
really hooks into people.
Well, I mean, you and I both sort of travelled, so we've both been to Paris and we both think that's a beautiful city. There's plenty of subjects over there that would fit right into your...
I saw one literally this morning when I was having a cup of tea this morning, and it's an Art Deco shop front, and it's just got this gorgeous window that's kind of really organically shaped, and there's so much there that I could do. And the old American style of architecture back in like 1910 to 40s, with the old sort of double or triple story, like a brownstone. Like a brownstone building, something like that as well. I mean, it's a beautiful feeling. I've got the world as a potential subject. My list of to-dos is miles long.
And I'll tell you straight away, there's this dilapidated old building on Boundary Road heading into Brayside. If you ever get to see it, you will definitely want to build this thing. It is grey. The wood is now grey, and it hasn't been lived in for about 40 years plus. And it just sits on the corner of this.
That's beautiful.
In the middle of a paddock. There's nothing else around it. I'll go past there a lot.
So I'll have to take a photo.
Yeah, I'd love to see that. Yes, please.
It just screams to be built. This thing. It's just so iconic. If you think of dilapidated building, you see this thing, and it's there.
So that's one of the things I love about what I do is pretty much anyone I talk to about it for more than 2 minutes, they'll start suggesting places to me. And one, that's good for me just for stuff to produce, but also I love these things. So, I'm
so much character.
Head, I get to see another cool old building. That's fantastic.
And it's a sort of, I have never been inside there, but it's the sort of building you'd go inside there, you'd find like on the walls the old, newspapers from 1910 or something like that up against the walls and so forth. It's just
So it's
beautiful.
like the kind of place where you'd see some guy on YouTube do a video on urban exploration or
yeah,
whatever they call that.
something like that.
Or ghost hunting or something.
Don't go in there. Don't go in at night time.
You gotta love those ghost shows. I mean, they do it on and have you ever seen them capture one?
No,
Never. And all these ghost hunters always seem to be in these sort of paramilitary uniforms for some reason, like ghosts of the enemy or something. It's really weird, man. It really is.
It's a whole different genre of life.
Yeah. All right, I think we'll wrap it up there. Dave, thanks so much for being on the show. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks,
for our
guys.
listeners out there, I've actually posted some of your stuff onto our Facebook page already. So drop in and have a look at your stuff. Otherwise, where can people find you?
The best place, if you're on Instagram, is just to look up David Hourigan, Miniature Artist.
How do you spell Hourigan?
It's Hourigan. Or you can find me on Facebook, David Hourigan, Miniature Artist. I think if you Google it, you'll find it. It's a pretty obscure name. It's not like, Bob Smith. Yeah.
Awesome. It's been fantastic having you on the show and very illuminating as well.
Did you get that? Bob Smith, because Bob Smith Industries near the glue. It's a modelling reference.
Bob Smith, send me the money. I did what you asked.
All right. Okay, let's do our sign-off. Ian.
Oh, photo which is your friend?
Julian.
Yeah, go buy more tools. That's the only thing I can...
People love that, you know.
Yeah,
I've had so many
I know.
people writing in saying,
Hey, David, you should buy more tools.
I should. I need to.
let's have a sign-off from our guest.
Thanks very much for having me, guys. It's
No,
been a real
that'll do.
pleasure.
No worries at all. Thank you all, and we'll be back in a fortnight.